Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will study the 17th flashed fifth note. As you will see, this is about different type of civilizations, different worldviews. And I think it's a very, let's say, relevant topic nowadays for us, those who living in, let's say, the US and trying to live as Muslim. Let's see, inshallah. Arsal.
Bismillah. Fifth note. Western science and civilization had to some extent a place in the old side's thought. So when the new side embarked on its journeys of the mind and the heart, they were transformed into the sickness of the heart and were the cause of excessive difficulties. The new side, therefore, wanted to shake off from his mind that the fallacious philosophy and dissolute civilization, in order to silence the emotions of his evil commanding soul, which testified in favor of Europe. He was compelled to hold in his spirit the following discussion, which, in one respect, is very brief and in another is long, with the collective personality of Europe. It should not be misunderstood. Europe is twofold. One follows the sciences which serve justice and right and the industries beneficial for the life of society through the inspiration it has received from true Christianity. This first Europe I am not addressing. I am addressing the second corrupt Europe, which, due to the darkness of the philosophy of naturalism, supposes the evils of civilization to be its virtues, and has driven mankind to vice and misguidance, as follows. On my journey of the spirit at that time, I said to Europe's collective personality, which apart from beneficial science and the virtues of civilization, holds in its hands meaningless, harmful philosophy and noxious, dissolute civilization. Know this, O second Europe. You hold a diseased and misguided philosophy in your right hand and a harmful and corrupt civilization in your left, and claim mankind's happiness is with these two. May your two hands be broken, and may these two filthy presents of yours be death of you. And so they shall be. O you unhappy spirit, which spreads unbelief and ingratitude, can a man who is suffering torments and is afflicted with ghastly calamities in both his spirit and his conscience and his mind and his heart be happy through his body wallowing in superficial, deceptive glitter and wealth? Can it be said that he is happy? Don't you see that on feeling despair at some minor matter and his hope for some illusory wish being lost and his being disillusioned at some insignificant business, which a person's sweet imaginings become bitter for him? What is pleasant torments for him? That's correct. And the world constricts him. What is pleasant torments him, and the world constricts him and becomes a prison for him. But what happiness can you ensure for such a wretched person who, through your inauspiciousness, has suffered the blows of misguidance in the deepest corners of his heart to the very foundations of his spirit? And because of this, whose hopes have all been extinguished and whose pains all arise from it? Can it be said of someone whose body is in a false and fleeting paradise and whose heart and spirit are suffering the torments of hell that he is happy? See, you have led astray wretched mankind in this way. You make them suffer the torments of hell in a false heaven. Should I continue?
Yeah, please. It will be a long thing.
Okay.
That's the reason I chose it.
O evil commanding soul of mankind, consider the following comparison and see where you have driven mankind. For example, there are two roads before us. We take one of them and see that at every step is some wretched, powerless person. Tyrants are attacking him, seizing his property and goods, and destroying his humble house. Sometimes they wound him as well. The heavens weep at his pitiful state. Wherever one looks, things are continuing in this vein. The sounds heard on this way are the roars of tyrants and groans of the oppressed. A universal mourning envelops the entire way. A person is afflicted with a boundless grief, since due to his humanity, is pained at the suffering of others. But because his conscience cannot endure so much pain, one who travels this way is compelled to do one of two things. Either he strips off his humanity and embracing a boundless savagery bears such a heart that so long as he is safe and sound, he is not affected, even if all the rest of the mankind perish. Or else he suppresses the demands of the heart and reason. O Europe, corrupted with vice and misguidance and drawn far from the religion of Jesus, you have bestowed this hellish state on the human spirit with your blind genius, which, like the Dajjal, has only a single eye. You afterwards understood that this incurable disease casts man down from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low, and reduces him to the basest level of animality. The only remedy you have found for it are the fantasies of entertainment and amusement and anodyne diversions which temporarily numb the senses. These remedies of yours are being the death of you, and so they shall be. There, the road you have opened up for the mankind and the happiness you have given it resembles this comparison. The second road the all-wise Quran has bestowed on mankind, it is like this. We see this in every stopping place, every spot, every town are patrols of a just monarch's equitable soldiers doing the rounds. From time to time, at the king's command, a group of the soldiers is discharged. Their rifles, horses, and gear belonging to the state are taken from them, and they are given their leave papers. They are apparently sad to hand over their familiar rifles and horses, but in reality are happy to be discharged and extremely pleased to visit the monarch and return to his court. Sometimes the demobilization officials encounter a raw recruit who does not recognize them. Surrender your rifle, they say. The soldier replies, I am a soldier of the king, and I am in his service. I shall go to him later. Who are you? If you come with his permission and consent, I greet you with pleasure. Show me his orders. Otherwise, go away and stay away from me. Even if I remain on my own and there are thousands of you, I shall still fight you, and it would not for myself, but because I do not own myself. I belong to my king. Indeed, myself and the rifle I have now are in trust from my owner. I shall not submit to you because I have to safeguard the trust and defend my king's honor and dignity. This situation, then, is one of the thousands on the second way, which are the cause of joy and happiness. You can think of the others for yourself. Throughout the journey, there is the mobilization and dispatch of troops with joy and celebrations, under the name of birth, and the discharge of troops with cheer and military bands under the name of death. This road has been bestowed on mankind by the all-wise Quran. Whoever accepts the gift wholeheartedly travels down to it to the happiness in this world and the next. He feels neither grief at the things of the past nor fear at those of the future. O second corrupted Europe, a number of your rotten and baseless foundations are as follows. You say, every living being, from the greatest angel to the tiniest fish, owns itself and works for itself and struggles for its own pleasure. It has the right to life, its aim and purpose, and all the endeavor is to live and continue its life. And you declare idiotically, life is conflict, because you suppose to be conflict, the compassionate, magnificent manifestations of the universal law of all generous creator, which is manifested through plants hastening to the assistance of animals and animals hastening to the assistance of man, through a principle of mutual assistance, which is conformed to in perfect obedience by all the principal beings of the universe. How can particles of food hastening with total eagerness to nourish the cells of the body, a manifestation of the principle of mutual assistance, be conflict? How can it be a clash and struggle? It is rather mutual help at the command of beneficent sustainer. Another of your rotten foundation is, as you say, everything owns. Everything owns itself. A clear proof that nothing owns itself is this. Among causes, the most noble and with regard to choice, the one with the most extensive will is man. But out of the most obvious acts connected to man's will, like thinking, speaking, and eating, only 100th single doubtful part is subject to his will and is within his power. So, how can it be said that he owns himself? If the highest beings with the most extensive will are thus inhibited from real power and ownership to this degree, someone who says that rest of beings, animate and inanimate, own themselves merely proves that he is more animal than the animals and more lifeless and conscious than the inanimate beings. What pushes you to make such an error and cast you into this abyss is your one-eyed genius. That is your extraordinary ill-omened brilliance. Due to that blind genius of yours, you have forgotten your sustainer, who is the creator of all things. You have attributed his work to imaginary nature and causes. You have divided up the creator's property among idols, false god. In regard to this, and in the view of your genius, every living creature and every human being has to resist innumerable enemies on his own and struggle to procure his endless needs. They are compelled to do this with the power of minute particle, a fine thread like will, a fleeting flash like consciousness, a fast extinguishing flame like life, a life which passes in a minute. But the capital of those wretched animate creatures is insufficient to answer even one of the thousand of their demands. When smitten by disaster, they can await no salve for their pain other than from death, blind causes. They manifest the meaning of the verse. For the prayer of those without faith is nothing but futile wandering in the mind. Your dark genius has transformed mankind's daytime into night, and in order to form that dark, distressing, unquiet night, you have only illuminated men with deceptive temporary lamps. Those lamps do not smile at them with joy, they rather smirk idiotically at their pitiful and lamentable state. Those lights mock and make fun of them. In the view of your pupils, all living beings are miserable, calamity stricken, and subject to the assaults of oppressors. The world is a place of universal mourning. Issuing from it are cries and wails at death and suffering. The pupil who has absorbed your instruction thoroughly becomes a pharaoh. But he is an abject pharaoh who worships the basest things and holds himself to the Lord over everything he reckons advantageous. A student of yours is obstinate, but an obstinate wretch who accepts utter abasement for a single prayer. He is so despicable as to kiss Satan's foot for some worthless benefit, and he is a bully. But because he has nothing in his heart on which to rely, he is an impotent, bullying braggart. His whole aim and endeavor is to satisfy the lusts of his soul, to cunningly seek his own personal interests under the screen of patriotism and devotion, and were to satisfy his ambition and pride. He loves seriously nothing at all other than himself and sacrifices everything for his own sake. As for the sincere, wholehearted student of the Quran, he is a worshipping servant, but he is an esteemed servant who does not stoop to bow in worship before even the mightiest of creatures and does not make the supreme benefit of paradise the aim of his worship. And he is mild and gentle, but at the same time noble and gracious and lowers himself before none but the all gracious creator and only stoops before the lowly with his permission and at his command. He is needy, but due to the reward his all generous owner is storing up for him in the future, he is at the same time self sufficient. And he is weak, but he is strong in his weakness, for he relies on the strength of his Lord, whose power is infinite. Would the Quran make its true student take this fleeting transient world as his aim and purpose, while not making him have even eternal paradise as his goal? Thus, you can understand how the two students' aims and endeavors differ from one another. You can further compare the zeal and self-sacrifice of the all-wise Quran students with the pupils of Sikh philosophy as follows. The student of philosophy flees from his brother for his own sake and file a lawsuit against him, whereas looking on all the righteous worshippers in the heavens and on the earth as brothers. The Quran student makes supplication for them in sincere fashion. He is happy at their happiness and he feels a powerful connection with them in his spirit. So that the praying he says, O God, grant forgiveness to all believing men and women. Furthermore, he considers the greatest things, the divine throne and the sun, to be subservient official, the servants and creatures like himself. Also compare in the following the loftiness and expansion of spirit of the two students. The Quran imparts such a joyous elevation to its students' spirits that instead of the 99 prayer beads, it places in their hands the minute particles of 99 worlds, displaying the manifestations of the 99 divine names, and tells them to recite their invocations with them. Listen to the invocations of such students of the Quran as Shah, Gilani, Rufai, and Shazali. May God be pleased with them. See in their fingers are the strings of particles, the droplets of water, the breaths of all creatures, and recite their invocations with them. They praise and glorify God with them and mention his most beautiful names. Behold the miraculous instruction of Quran of miraculous exposition and see how man is elevated by it. Insignificant man who is stunned and confused at some minor grief or tiny sorrow and is defeated by a microscopic germ. How his inner senses expand so that the beings in the mighty world appear inadequate as prayer beads for his invocations. He considers paradise to be insufficient as the aim of his invocations and recitations of the divine names. Yet he does not see himself as the superior to the lowest of Almighty God creatures. He combines the utmost dignity with the utmost humility. You can see from his how abject and base are philosophy's students. Thus, the guidance of Quran, which looks at the two worlds with two shining eyes, familiar with the unseen, and points with two hands at to the two happinesses for mankind, says concerning the truths with which the one-eyed genius proceeding from the Sikh philosophy of Europe sees wrongly. O man, the self and property you hold is not yours. It is in trust to you. The owner of the trust is an all-compassionate and munificent one, powerful over all things and with knowledge of all things. He wants to buy from you the property you hold so that he can guard it for you and it will not be lost. He will give you a good price for it in the future. You are a soldier under orders and charged with duties. Work in his name and act in his account, for he sends you the things you need as sustenance and protects you from the things you are unable to bear. The aim and result of this life of yours is to manifest your owner's names and attributes. When a calamity comes your way, say, to God we belong, and to him is our return. That is to say, I am in the service of my owner, O calamity. If you have come with his permission and consent, greetings. You are welcome. For anyway, sometime we shall return to him and enter his presence, and we yearn for him. Since he will release us from the responsibilities of life, let the release and discharge be at your hand. O calamity, I consent to it. But if he has decreed your coming as a trial for my dutifulness and loyalty in preserving my trust, then without his permission and consent to surrender it to you, so long as I have the power, I will not surrender my owner's trust to one not certainly charged to receive it. Consider this one example out of 1,000 and see the degrees in the instruction, given the genius of philosophy and guidance of Quran. In reality, the two sides proceed in the manner described above, but the degrees of people in guidance and misguidance differ, and the degrees of heedlessness differ. Not everyone can perceive completely this truth in every degree, because heedlessness numbs the senses. In the present age, it has so deafened them that the civilized do not feel this grievous pain and suffering. However, Sensitivity is increasing and rending the veil of heedlessness due to developments in science and the warnings of death, which every day displays 30,000 corpses. Utter abhorrence and 1,000 regrets should be felt for those who take the way of misguidance to Europeans' idols and the natural sciences, and for those who follow them in blind imitation. O sons of this land, do not try to imitate Europeans. How can you reasonably trust in and follow the wise and invalid, worthless thought of Europe after the boundless tyranny and enmity it has shown you? No, no. You who imitate them in dissoluteness are not following them, but unconsciously joining their ranks and putting to death both yourselves and your brothers. Know that the more you follow them in immorality, the more you lie in claiming to be patriots. Because to follow them in this way is to hold your nation in contempt, to hold the nation up to ridicule. God guides you and you to the straight path.
Oh, you can stop here. Just like that was a beautiful read. So no need to say we cannot study every the detail of the text. It's a long one. Arsalan would tell you. We will inshallah try to summarize it from beginning to end. In a minute, inshallah, brother Yusuf will do it for us. But before him, what is the first impression stayed with you? We read a long text. What was the first, I mean, not the first, but the most dominant thing that you felt?
Is this being live streamed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. I can't be honest then. I mean, what stood out to me is that we're obviously we have an inferiority complex. I don't know if the text wasn't really suggesting that, but I think this is my own
with you. Like,
understanding that we feel that we need to follow these two sides of like the philosophy and the sciences. I don't know if those are the two sides, but we need to we take that, we swallow that pill, and then we feel like we need to follow it, and it's also taking us sort of down the drain with these with this sort of worldview that is actually, we feel like this is something we want to aspire towards, but really those are the people who are in misery, and so we're just following them towards their own demise.
so the author that talks about two different worlds. Forget about the names. Like he uses Europe because he was looking from Turkey, the way he was living and so on, and he was using the terms that the Turkish people would know. So, but he's talking about the two different worldviews, right? Let's say worldview A and worldview B. How would you summarize these A and B? No, you. Again, whatever
Yeah.
stayed with you from the text doesn't need to be the what author is actually saying.
Yeah.
What you understood.
I don't know so much about worldview B, but well, he did talk. I don't know if this is what you're asking, actually, but he did talk about that there were benefits to also that worldview. While there were benefits we take from that, but the other parts of it we don't want to follow. So that whatever good that they've done within the sciences, or within how they brought justice or civilization in a sense, we can take from, but that doesn't mean we take everything, because obviously they're following the superficial, the material, sort of like the glitter of the world, and that is like reaping sort of like corruption in their heart, in their soul, very creates like a very hollow life. So that we're actually, if we're taking it, all as a package, then we're also going to be suffering from those same diseases.
Do you want to continue?
No.
Okay. Anyone else? What stayed with you when we read the text? Sultan? Do you need microphone? Yeah. Oh, turn it on, please, before you speak.
Oh, so he's talking about two Europes, I guess. One Europe that sort of follows like Christianity, and the other one that he doesn't like, which is he calls the corrupt Europe. And he says that, so I'm just quoting him, I'm addressing the second corrupt Europe, which, through the darkness of the philosophy of naturalism, supposing the evils of civilization to be its virtues, has driven mankind to vice and misguidance. And then he describes what's happening in the next few pages. I don't really understand why he has a beef with the second Europe per se.
Why he? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Why he has beef with the second Europe? Like
Okay,
exactly.
fine. Okay.
Like he's saying all this materialistic things, blah blah blah, but it's kind of hard to pinpoint the exact reason why he has a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, let's go with Darartu, inshallah. After Darartu, the only European in the room is, I guess, Sarah.
I think Turkey is in Europe too.
No, it's just a fraction of it. She's German. Oh, she's German. Okay.
I guess what I understood it was One Europe is kind of following like this. The idea is supposed to actually bring you happiness, but the issue with it is it doesn't. It's this quickness of like there's a desire to gain wealth, there's a desire to acquire supposedly knowledge, to advance and somehow. But at the end of that, you're numb. Like you're not satisfied despite having everything. So there's this temporary enjoyment one Europe seems to have. So how do you discover the other Europe? I think that's kind of what I got from it. There,
Europe.
I couldn't follow the whole text, but the only thing is I don't think so. He admits that there are two Europe, and the first one that he doesn't have a problem with, I don't think is the Europe that follows Christianity, but it's the good side of Europe that is inspired by Christianity. So, civil rights, for example, if we give an example, human rights, science, whatever, this is this part of Europe that is inspired by Christianity, but not like, it doesn't mean that it's Christianity by itself. Yeah, so that's what I understood, because he said that also, and I think the second paragraph, one follows the science which serve justice and right, and the industry is beneficial for the life of society through the inspiration of Christianity. Now, the other side of Europe, which I think he wants to talk about, he said philosophy and naturalism, and later he talked about how, as I remember, like basically focusing on like when he said like every human being or every being owns itself. So I think talking about individualism, one thing, and talking about also how, so forgetting about Christianity, which is like, I think this is something we talked about before, believing that, like as a human, you have the power to do things, you have the power to heal yourself, everything is within you. So I think this is what like he criticized, like the focus of Europe is like the human being, the like the individual human being, which it's not kind of a bad thing, but I think what he meant is that forgetting the spiritual part of human being, or believing that this human being is fine. He will be fine. He will be happy just, by the materialistic things around him. So he doesn't need like God or spiritual or whatever. That's what I understood.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Anything else about the text? So this is one part of the text, right? It's talking about this corrupt worldview, which is materialism, naturalism, and so on. Did he talk about something else in the text?
So, the other part, not Europe, the other time,
Yeah, right. This is the second part, right? Like, he mentioned Quran as well a few times, right?
Yes, but I don't remember what he said, but I know it did. So maybe some.
Okay, that's great. Alhamdulillah.
Oh, reading translate.
Oh. Anyone else? No? Yusuf, would you like to summarize the text? Not the entire text, like we can skip some parts, which are not, part of the, let's say, the main topic we want to discuss, but just give us
So maybe giving a very, very brief
yes.
summary. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more in the sense of there's this East-West clash, like Western world with its worldview is pretending or as if it's the truth that this is a better civilization, like the Western worldview. And if you look at it from any Eastern or non-Western, let's put it this way, non-Western, because Africa is also East now, like anywhere which is not Europe, plus Canada, Australia, and US is pretty much East, like old-fashioned, not civilized, right? So the Western worldview, and in the text it's depicted as Europe, because this is where the ideas started emerging. So Western worldview is showing off, saying that we are human and the rest are animal humans, less humans and whatnot, like just to use some common, some recent words about it, right? Animal humans or not so human, but this is the general perspective. It's not only the perspective of the Western to the East, but also within the East, the new generation, looking at the wonders of the civilization or the technology in the West, youth, Muslim youth or Eastern youth, however you would like to take it, starts feeling similar, saying that, look, I mean, they have the rockets, they have internet, they invented computers, they invented everything, and they are living comfortable lives. They have those, I don't know, Netflix, movies, fun life, everything is there. And you say Quran is the truth? What good do we have here? Like there's this clash that's happening. And now the author in here is saying that, then let's talk about it. What is in the Western world? What is in the, by East now I mean Quran, I'm not meaning China or India or these ideologies or philosophies.
Pakistan?
What does Quran offer versus what does the Western worldview offer? And while doing that, author makes a distinction saying that Western world is not only this naturalistic world, there is Christianity. And author makes a distinction, which I think is important, saying that whatever good you see in the West, there are goods in there, but this is from the inspiration of revelation again. For West, this revelation is Christianity. And he says, let's keep that. Let's give it its due. But then there's this philosophy. Now, he makes a distinction in general between philosophy and revelation. And when it comes to philosophy, what he means is the attitude that I find truth by myself. I don't need God or whatever, like prophet and whatnot. Who is that? I will find the truth. I can figure it out by myself. That worldview is giving this notion of false self-confidence. And this false self-confidence is relying on materialism, which is again matter, strength, and whatnot. So then now the author is comparing this aspect of Western civilization, this aspect which gives philosophy in one hand and entertainment in the other hand. So these are the two things that this civilization is giving to you. Let's see if it is going to be useful for you or not. What are the results? What are the tenets of these two things, philosophy and entertainment? What does it offer? What are the outcomes? And on the other side, what does Quran offer? And what are the outcomes of Quran's worldview? So the rest of the long text was a comparison between these two. But I guess the big picture is that fight. And in the political sphere, we do see that, even with the wars and everything. Like the colonialism was that war, actually. The Western civilization went ahead, which seems to be advertising itself as civilization. Look at how many million lives killed and just freedom taken away from all these nations, like the whole Asia, whole Africa, South America, like the colonization was there, right? And then how does this, is it really that civilization, or is it really offering what it is seemingly offering? And on the other hand, to itself also, what does it offer? Does it give the happiness, the satisfaction that the human is seeking for? Why is that important? Because me as a child of a Muslim parenthood, do I admire the Western worldview, the Western lifestyle? If I do so, then I need to read this carefully more.
Jazakallah khairan. So it's really interesting. Like author does not formulate it as West versus East. He says Western civilization versus Quran. So, and again, like we have to be really careful when we say Western civilization. So such discussions to me it resembles a discussion on, let's say, TV, right? Let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we would have a discussion with Yusuf whether televisions, TVs are good or not, let's say. And then let's assume we decide that TVs are not good, and then say that we shouldn't put TVs in our homes. That's our conclusion. Now, fast forward in this day, we have this conclusion we shouldn't use any TVs, and people say nobody uses TV anymore. Like, who cares? Whether you should TV in your home or not, nobody uses TV anymore, right? But actually, the discussion we had was not about TV. It was what is broadcasted, through TV, right? So you can apply it to same thing, for instance, to social media today. So at that time, author was talking about the Western science and civilization and so on and so forth, because that's what was there as an alternative. And today it's almost same. We still have one type of civilization, which is at least marketed as, being a Western civilization, having roots. I mean, just story, made up stories mostly, but having roots on, let's say, Greek philosophy and so on. There's such a, the marketed civilization, which invented the science, rationality, whatever, all these stories. There's this civilization, one alternative. An author talks about another alternative, and again, it's not Eastern civilization. We usually, I'm making this distinction because we usually formulate it in this way, West versus East, as if, whatever is after, let's say, what is considered East according to Europe-centric worldview. Starting from Turkey, maybe, right? Turkey and the rest everything is East. So he's not talking about that. He's not talking about different, these mystic cultures, the Chinese culture, I don't know, Indian culture, Middle Eastern culture, whatever. He's not talking about that. So there's this Western civilization, and there's this Quranic civilization, right? So, okay, let's start from there. What do we understand? And let's use text as a base. But what do we understand when we say Western civilization? What comes to mind? And online participants, you are also welcome to speak. What comes to mind? Western civilization. Help us, Sarah.
Or like only the bad stuff? Or
Oh, no. I'm asking you, like, what comes to your mind? Western civilization.
okay, so geography wise, I would say, as you said, like Europe and the US.
Please, let's not constrain to like a geography.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
This is just a main given.
That's why I said geography wise, because there are other stuff. So, what is Western civilization? So I just want to make sure that we cannot make this distinction between East and West, because I feel like even a country like Turkey or Lebanon or whatever is not truly like, it has a lot from the Western civilization, right? Anyways, like kind of like secular. Yeah. So if I think about it, is like, first of all, a Western civilization, as you said, like religion or God or spirituality is not a center thing in someone's life. But at the same time, in a Western civilization, you're free to do whatever you want when it comes to religion, or you're free to practice whatever you want to practice to a certain extent, I guess. So that's part of the Western
In your home, in your private space.
Really?
I mean, even if you do it in public,
Yeah.
it is your circle.
Yes.
Like, you are not supposed to, let's say, emanate any wisdom or light toward others. You have to keep it to yourself.
Give an example. What do you mean?
So you go to your classroom, okay, and you talk about your belief, and they applaud you and say that, yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing your culture or your thoughts, right? It's not something to discuss and try to see whether it is true or not, whether we can, find a synthesis of, what you think, what I think. But I'd rather,
Discussion. It's just like you had a thought.
exactly. You had a thought, and no offense, but I knock this, the wood, it makes sounds, and it makes sounds. I'm okay with this. And I ask you, you make some sound, and you share your belief, whatever it is, and I'm okay with this. This is the, the let's say, the freedom we're talking about.
Okay.
It's not that, oh, that's interesting, let's talk about it. We don't see this.
Somehow I could only think about the good parts. So
Please, yeah.
for me, for example, and it's like one of the reasons maybe someone would live here is like the freedom you have, whether it's to practice what you want, a freedom, for example, as a woman, where, to go whatever you want and to do whatever you want. This is like if someone would talk something about a good thing about the Western civilization, in my opinion, would be, women have to a certain extent, more freedom than in another civilization. But now we have to compare it to Quranic civilization, or just because like indirectly it goes, to comparing like the situation of women in Eastern.
Yes.
So that's why I think about like the situation of women in the West. So that's one thing that comes to mind. another thing when I think about Western civilization is, and what the author talks about, is science and reliance on science, and not on like superstitions and whatever, you know, especially when it comes to like advancement, energy, research, everything, I suppose, is like you know, medicine, all of that is all based on science and rationality. This is like one thing about the Western civilization. Another thing we say about the Western civilization is there's more equality, let's say, at least now, you know, I'm not talking like centuries ago, but at least now there's more equality among like the citizens. There's no hierarchy, there's no corruption, whatever, you know, everyone is equal in in the law, in a court of law, everyone is equal, whether it's a man and a woman or poor or rich or whatever. That's what I think about that's, I would think, why a lot of us live in Western civilization, because of these things. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, that's a great point, because that's the what exactly I want to, you know, come to. So again, let's forget about the geographical divisions and so on within the US. We are living in the US, except maybe for Dua and Zarar nowadays. But the rest of us are in the US. And like in the same, the geographical, you know, the what is it? Like within the same space, we can apply this text, if you ask me, and we can say that there are worldview that we work in, which is which we can call as Western civilization. And there is another worldview that I personally, for instance, trying to live, which I call Quranic civilization. And I can see that these two conflicting most of the times. So yeah, anyway, we can talk about that. Anyone else? Fahim, would you like to add anything? Nobody wants to say anything. Yusuf, please go ahead. Oh, there are also a few comments, by the way, all from Suhail. Let me read them. When I ask what come to mind when I say Western civilization, again, not as a geographical entity, he said materialism, consumerism. However, also he said infrastructure, rule of law, development, education. And then when I said, yes, you can leave your religion, but it has to be in your private space. And he said, exactly, in your private space. As an example, he said, France is the best example for, you know, how this private space is, let's say, formulated. He says it is a minority amongst minorities rather than a truth statement. So when we were talking about the right to freedom to speak in classroom. Oh, Yusuf.
So freedom. So I think, yes, this the only part that I got stuck with, you're trying to save it from east-west. I respect that. I just want to put an anecdote over there. Yeah, the text was not an east-west wording. So this is just more our familiar way of speaking it. This is why I was bringing it up. And even in the eyes of the Western civilization, East, for example, does not include Russia. East, I don't know if Orient, like when we say Oriental, does anybody mean China? It sounds more in the sense of like Muslim culture, maybe plus a little bit of India. So, but yes, we should carry that on. Maybe just take it as a starting point, but the discussion is more about European philosophy versus Quranic worldview. So this is what it is. But in our more day-to-day culture, it is it might be, or at least for me, Western civilization versus our side of the world. But yeah, let's not get stuck in there. And as you rightfully said, let's discuss it on the Quranic worldview versus, because when we talk about Quranic worldview, as Sister Sarah was mentioning, if I compare it to today's Turkey, today's Lebanon, today's Pakistan, today's Iran, is any one of them, or today's Saudi Arabia, is any one of them representative of Quranic worldview? I don't know if do we really even need to put a question mark. Maybe we should just put an exclamation mark rather than a question mark. So, but the comparison in here is, so in this sense, yes, like freedom of women in United States versus freedom of women in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, something to be considered worthy of discussion. So what sort of freedom is being given in here? It feels more comfortable and whatnot. Yes, to a certain extent. And I put this to a certain extent because as the author was making a distinction, this distinction is important. He says there's a good aspect of it which comes in justice and whatnot, technology, justice. But then there's a worldview which comes with this justice and technology as well. Like you cannot divorce, it's hard to divorce one from the other. As Suhail was mentioning, for instance, consumerism. Consumerism is part of the current civilization that we live in, and it's very much coupled with technology. Like, do you have the desire to update your phone every once in a while? Or do you have the desire to buy a little bit faster, a little bit of a car with more gadgets in there? Not even faster or comfortable. It's just has more buttons to press and whatnot. So this sort of a thing is in there. So that wastefulness is coupled with technology. So technology is not coming independently as a good tool over there, but it's coming with the worldview that produces it. So internet, communication, very beautiful. Now you can talk to your mother across the globe with FaceTime. But what does come along with that communication? It doesn't stop there. Now everybody is talking. Like another aspect of speech, freedom of speech is there. But then you start seeing that even when it comes to justice, it was very just to a certain extent. Then we started seeing those companies who themselves were in the first place distributing freedom of justice, like Twitter or Google. Then we started seeing that no, our ideas, if your speech is within our domain of what we consider true, you're going to be allowed to speak. Otherwise, either your account is going to be blocked or your voice is going to be silenced down and whatnot. So even when it comes to justice, we start seeing it to be selective. But is this a coincidence? Is this just that human nature is at play? And this is why they are just at certain points, and now injustice is starting to creep in when it comes to like certain lives being killed versus certain other lives. I mean, at least practically speaking, nowadays, Ukrainian lives are more sacred because there's no more defined in there, while Palestinian lives are, I mean, it's just useless or valueless. So still, we do not see this sort of even a tone of justice anywhere. But is this a coincidence? Or is this a byproduct of the worldview, the very same civilization, which was suggesting me to consume more, or which was suggesting me to speak freely to a certain extent, after which, once you pass this boundary, as in the case of Birkan Darret was talking about, yeah, you can express your ideas. Let's say you can say, La ilaha illallah, yeah, this is what you guys believe in. But if you say, no, this is the truth, and what you guys are doing is wrong, then you're not allowed to say that. Like now you start becoming, either people will mock you at this moment and not take you serious, or if you say, no, I am quite serious, and let's have a conversation about that, this is where the conversation will end. You cannot carry on the conversation like that. As long as it stays as just an idea out there, not even an idea, it's more like your culture being conveyed, it's okay. And people will celebrate your opinion just for the sake of, yeah, you're bringing in another color and we are being diverse, very nice and whatnot. But when you say, no, I'm pretty sure this is right, and what you're coming up with is, I don't think that's right. What you're coming up with is wrong because it's contradicting with what I am saying, and I am so sure about what I am saying, then people would say, how dare you judge my idea, sort of a thing. And then this is where the freedom of speech will end. So this is why there are all those boundaries in those freedoms, because on the surface, we never get into that sort of a territory, and we are being okay. Or at least we are feeling fine that we are given the opportunity to talk in the classroom, right? But once you start taking it serious, then I guess we start seeing that in your private space, people are okay. And even people won't be okay if in your private space, what you conclude would say, let's say in our private space, let's assume we discussed La ilaha illallah, and I'm still going with Suhail's example. We said that La ilaha illallah, according to that, we should be eating and drinking, but not wasting, okay? So we are not going to be wasteful from now on. Let's say, as Muslims in the United States, which I believe is 3% or so of the population, or 1% or 3%? 3%.
I don't know. We have to
Anyway,
reproduce them. 3 is too low.
1%. Okay, 1%. If that 1% would take that serious and stop wasting and stop not being consumer anymore, what would happen? Would that freedom still be there? Only 1% of the economy not wasting anymore, not being a consumer anymore. Then things will start changing, I think. All our freedoms are good as long as we are part of the larger system where, I mean, still you're consuming as good as we are, still you are behaving, talking. I mean, here and there are a few differences. Yeah, I mean, the women are covering their head, but males, oh, they're just like us. And then we are integrated to the society the way the society wants to function. Then, yeah, okay, it's okay. I mean, even if it's better, you just talk about a few Arabic words here and there, and they're a little different, then we will celebrate. So I guess this is the level of freedom that we are talking about.
Wow.
I guess I was thinking, I agree with you. I think it does come with restriction till a certain point, then you can't cross that. But my question is that if we look at the ground world doesn't even exist in the Muslim world either. Like, I mean, I guess Ethiopia is a little different because Christians are actually the majority, but even there, like both parties can practice and yell all they want. Like the yelling part is allowed, but there's still that definition. There's still that restriction, and also like the desire to actually supposedly kind of move toward the West. Actually, there is no desire even among the Muslims to live a Quranic like world. Like I don't know if I've seen that, to be fair. What I see even in the Muslim world is like, okay, how can we have the best technology? How can we consume the most money? How can we look XYZ? So there, I don't know. I guess like I like to think the West is in some ways doing better because like one is knowing and making a mistake, other is not even willing to acknowledge it. So one is like saying, I am this thing, and it's not even a fraction reflection of that thing, if that makes sense. Like at least one is not pretending that like I'm a Muslim. One is like, no, I don't even want to hear it. Here's how you're gonna live, and here's like what the rules. The other is like, I am a Muslim. I'm a good Muslim. I have mosques. Things are happening. But then if we look at everything, woman oppression does exist, most severely in these areas. So like if you look at it, you're just wondering like, okay, so that world doesn't have it. So where do you like what do you do? Because ultimately you have to live somewhere, right? So I guess that's kind of where I'm conflicted.
I just have a question because you said that, of course, our freedom here has a limit. I mean, freedom everywhere has a limit to a certain extent. And you said that we cannot stand out there and say that what I believe is the truth and what you believe is wrong. And if it was up to me, I would make everyone follow my, belief. But so this is the freedom in the Western civilization is limited. I want to compare it to the Quranic freedom. Because I don't think, according to the Quran, or I don't know, that you could say, also the Quran says that, is there this kind of freedom in the Quran that you could say, like you could oppose the Quran, say, I have this, I believe in this, and this is the truth, and it's like, it's weird to me saying that, like, this is the truth and everyone should follow it, because if you look at the Quran, it's oh yeah, hatu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqin.
That is challenging those who claim that they have truth. It's like, if you say truth, bring your evidence.
Lakum dinakum waliya din. Yeah, exactly. So even the Quran says lakum dinakum waliya din. So why would I come out and say what I believe is the truth, and you should follow it? That's like the whole point. Yeah.
But for lakum dinakum waliya din, I think it's a little different because as we were discussing that a few weeks ago on Tuesday discussion, the purpose of that surah is, and we need to read it from the very entrance, individually is the distinction clear in my world that religion and my religion are totally different. Like there's no middle ground. So Surah Al-Kafirun is first and foremost for myself to distinguish the ideas, because sometimes it feels like I will find some middle ground, like Quran is good, but this other like materialism is good. So let's try to combine the two. We will see a lot such tendencies nowadays. One can try to, just as a cartoon example, do not take it as the example, but just as a cartoon example. Let's say today you're studying some sort of sciences and say, well, particle does this, fire burns them, whatnot. And then, but also I believe that God is the creator. Then I say, well, God gave those qualities to them, and then now they start acting like the sort of a middle ground that we try to find. Like we don't want to get rid of science, we don't want to get rid of Quran either. We just put a sugarcoat science to make it sound like religious and whatnot, rather than trying to find a fundamental explanation. So lakum dinukum waliya dini, in this sense, and we have been discussing this for some time, it's more like in my world, is the distinction clear? Like Quran is talking about this, the other one is totally talking about something different. Unless I reinterpret everything, let's say, that the materialist worldview is suggesting to me, I shouldn't simply take it and then put a Bismillah at the beginning of my thesis. Like I have seen this in Iranian thesis. Like the first page of the thesis, PhD thesis of one of my Iranian friends were Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And I learned that this is how they do. Like at the beginning of each.
You have to do that.
You have to do Bismillah. But this Bismillah doesn't convert the message in the thesis to becoming an Islamic anyways. It's just a word written over there, right? So this shouldn't be the case. So lakum dinukum waliya din does not necessarily mean that Islam is okay with this religion, that religion, and whatnot. But rather, in your world, is the distinction clear, Yusuf? Like, do you think that this is what materialist science says, this is what Quran says? Is the distinction clear? But when it comes to the other one, hatu burhanakum, Quran, since the time it came, it said that if you think that this Quran is not truth, bring something like this. 1/10 of it, just a small surah. Bring something. If you really think that this is speech of man, it has been challenging. And alternatively, it was also saying that if they come up with some claims, by them I mean anything. It could be something other than Quranic worldview. It could be materialism. It could be Christianity. It could be whatever. Quran is saying that bring your evidence if you're truthful. So Quran is open to that conversation. I'm not talking about some certain Muslim country where can a Christian talk in a Muslim country? I don't know where a Muslim country exists today anyway. So that's not the point. But how does Quran invite us or shape us? Quran is open to that conversation. And this is, yeah.
Calling for this conversation.
Yes.
When I say open, it's like an optional.
Yeah.
You're calling for this conversation. You have to leave this tension in you, the fight in you. It has to exist.
And if we read how it happened, like for example, when Sahabe went to Medina for the first time, the leader of Medina, their tribe, people come and say, I'm going to kill you. So Sahabe says, okay, put your spear aside, listen to me for 1 hour. If you don't agree, then you kill me. So being open to that conversation, this is how it had been. But actually, the more controversial one would come in the next note, which Birkan wanted to read that, but maybe we should have read this. There's a rule such as apostate should be killed. Where do you put this? An author is talking about this in the next note, for example. He talks about that. And he says, actually, it should be. It's an interesting thing, right? The way it's being practiced is there's an apostate, just chop off the head, right? Why? Where does this come from? And in practice, how it had been? Is it an apostate as just a youth as it is nowadays? Let's say a Muslim kid who is born in a Muslim family, yet Islam was just a name, but nothing other than that. It was totally Western culture and whatnot. And then kid at some point decides to say that let me throw this name because it's being restricted for no good reason, for no use. Let me throw this away, which is a very logical thing to do at this moment. Is this kid really called apostate, or the kid was never there since day one anyways? So what does this mean? And if it was truly a believer at some point and then becomes apostate, what does that mean? There are different things.
Let's not go there.
So, yeah.
Okay, there's a note from Zarar. He quoted a few ayahs, I guess. He says, but when the truth came to them from us, they said, if only he was given the like of what Moses had been given. Did they not deny what had been given to Moses earlier? They claimed both scriptures are works of magic supporting each other, adding, we truly deny both. Say, O Prophet, bring them a scripture from Allah, which is better guide than these two, so I may follow it, if your claim is true. So if they fail to respond to you, then know that they only follow their desires. And who could be more astray than those who follow their desires with no guidance from Allah? Surely Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. So this is Surah Qasas 49 to 51. And then he says, Quran allows and encourages debate to the most extraordinary degree. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Okay, let's go back to text.
And maybe just
Oh,
one thing.
that was
Also for Daratu's question, we need to keep in mind. So
Okay.
Darat was asking, where is that worldview being?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I wanted to.
to explain what's the Quranic worldview, because obviously it doesn't mean Islamic country or Islamic state. So what do you mean when you say Islamic worldview? Is it just simply focusing on the Akhirah and just going by the world how you are supposed to, or what are you trying to refer to?
Oh.
Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to what he asked. So my question is, it's hard comparing the Western civilization with the Quranic civilization. It would be easier to compare the Western civilization with like another civilization that kind of existed, that we saw things, you know, like happening. Because now we're not considering any of the Islamic countries as like following the Quranic civilization. Not even Iran, let's say.
Not even Iran.
Not even Iran. See, my goodness.
I was so helpful there.
How could you, brother Yusuf? I mean, Saudi Arabia, I would understand, but yeah. And then, like, if I think about it, even before, like, even when we were still at the, what is it called, like, the Muslim Khilafah, like, whether it was the Abbasids or whatever, or the Umayyads, right after I don't think we also had, like, you know, a Quranic civilization. So I'm just wondering, when did we ever live a Quranic civilization, and whether it's actually just at the individual level, you know, just every person would live this Quranic civilization. It doesn't have to do with like a nation, you know. That's what I yeah. Oh yeah, that too.
I think we can now study the text, because the text was making that distinction about what is the Western civilization or what it offers versus what Quran is offering. So I think this is going to make a clear explanation of what we should be looking for. And I guess in regards to just practice for Sister Sarah's question, Prophet's life was an example of that, and Khulafai Rashidun was an example of that. Because after Khulafai Rashidun, things changed. When rulership went from Khilafah to kingdom, then nationalism and everything, then things got messed up from there on. But at least, I mean, it doesn't mean that things got totally messed up. So still, relative to how things are messed up right now, still you can see a lot of better examples of everything. But things started going wrong. But there is a period where we can talk about where things were properly done, to take as an example. But inshallah, for the maybe more general conceptual comparison, we can go with the text.
Well, let's start talking about the text, and maybe we should correct ourselves. I don't remember from the text whether author used the Quranic civilization, the term, but the Quranic worldview mostly. So, but the reason I ask all these questions and you know, trying to understand what people think, I really enjoy seeing that, not, you know, as a fun, but I think it's really a good way of educating yourself, understanding something. When you see this tension in people, in yourself as well, that we don't want to lose certain things when we start studying, let's say, Iman, the belief. Like the moment we start making these comparisons, we have this feeling that some glittering things in my life will be taken away. Like I don't want to lose my sense of gaining wealth. I want to gain wealth. And I'm so afraid that, let's say, Brother Yusuf will tell me that, no, working for money is haram. Or, you know, I don't, as a scientist, let's say, I really don't want to lose it. And I'm so afraid when somebody start talking about the Quranic worldview that I will lose it. And I'm trying to, just like Yusuf was saying about lakum dinukum part, we are directly, starting to find trying to find a middle ground. Oh, no, this is also allowed, this is not haram, this is, not, this is permissible, and so on and so forth. We are so attached to things. And we are so uncomfortable when trying to, the probe, like touch these things that we are so attached. We are so afraid. And as author mentions in the text, the lights in our life, and this is all started with our khutbah, brother Sial and Muhammad, we were listening, that the Hatib was saying that we shouldn't imitate the celebrations, right? We shouldn't be part of them, and so on and so forth. And when we look around, it's so beautiful, right? It's so, everywhere is light. I enjoy this light. I mean, no lie. Yeah, exactly. I'm not putting name. All these lights everywhere, right? It's so, I don't know, beautiful. Like you walk around them and so on. But there's also another thing about them, that. And there's this tension, right? I mean, when I walk with my daughter, she enjoys them a lot. And as a father, let's say, I want to show more. But at the same time, I ask myself, what am I doing? Like what culture or what worldview that I'm exposing, or exposing her to. So this tension. And here, author says, there are two worldviews that we all, again, this is not about the geography. This is not about this country or that country. This is about the personal worldviews that we are exposed to. And one worldview, author says, it's about, he uses some keywords as naturalism, materialism, and so on. And let's expand it a little bit. He says there's one worldview in which everything, not only every human, but everything, every existing thing, exists by themselves. They have limited power, limited size, whatever. And then they try to survive. And through the conflict of the forces, we see some order there, which is mostly arbitrary. Okay? And when we look at, like when we talk about the humans, how it manifests there, every individual exists by itself and lives for themselves, right? Has to survive. So we have to respect each other to some extent to preserve our survival, right? To help each other to survive. Because if I, let's say, cross a line and harm your survival, then the next moment my survival can be also harmed. So we have to put an order. So this is how we see an order, let's say, in certain societies and so on. It's all about the conflict of forces. And if you have your means to enforce something, let's say implicitly or explicitly, you can do that because this is how things are. This is the nature of things, right? The more powerful one endures. So this is one worldview, that everything happens by itself. There's no such thing as somebody guiding us. We are living in a darkness and we have to find our ways. And we do it, let's say, as a humanity through our sciences and so on that we invent, that we have to invent. This is one worldview. Another worldview, as author says, the Quranic worldview, which says, no, 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 you are not left alone. You are a creation. You are created for a reason, for a purpose, and you should be fulfilling your purpose. And on that regard, you will be given guidance. You are given guidance. And there is no such thing as conflict in reality. There is only mercy and compassion in the way things are created. So this is the Quranic worldview. You are an abd, you are a worshipper, and there's a purpose, there's a meaning of your life that you don't invent, but rather you try to fulfill, you try to understand. And you have all the means to understand it because there's revelation given to you, the guidance given to you. So this is the two worldview. An author says the first worldview seems more free. It seems like, there's more freedom because everybody exists by themselves and they have their own boundaries and so on and so forth. You can do whatever you want to do within this boundary, and to the extent it complies with the rest of the system and so on. It seems like you have freedom. And you are not created, so you don't have to obey anything. There is no such thing as the purpose of your life. You have freedom to invent it. This is what they tell us today, right? That you invent, you discover your purpose. It sounds like a freedom, more freedom even, but author says it rots your spirit. It gives you some worldly pleasures, but it rots your spirit. And this is, making a huge, let's say, a harm to the humanity. This worldview, he says. Versus Quranic worldview, again, being a worshipper, the abd, being a creation, the art of the creator of the entire universe, he says, this is the real freedom. This helps humanity. So this is the distinction I see. And to me, this is a distinction that we can, see in our lives. And we can live. We don't have to find a country that, implemented this today or in past. It's about today and our lives.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Since him was asking the worldview, Quranic worldview, is it being a little clearer or not yet? Quranic worldview. So this, and it's a fundamental difference. So what Brother Birkan was saying is a fundamental difference. As Walter was highlighting, one of them was life is a struggle versus life is a helping each other. Quranic worldview's outcome is life is ta'awun. What would be a translation? Cooperation. Life is a cooperation. Materialist worldview is saying that no, life is a struggle. So as people in this room, which one does it sound more true to you, for example? Is life as we see in the wildlife, as you see in yourself, life? Is it a struggle or is it a cooperation? The author is saying that life is a cooperation. Meaning, if you look at the whole existence, you drink water. The water goes to, in your body, those water molecules, they go to wherever they are supposed to go. As if the water molecule is reaching out to the help of even the cell over here. You see that everything is so much coordinating with everything else in your body. Or the clouds bringing you rain. Sun is raising, everything in this life is supporting you to live, not only to you, but the whole life to continue. What sort of a struggle you are talking about, he says. Because this now Quranic worldview is really looking at it holistically. But the Western worldview or European worldview, materialist worldview, will focus on one lion attacking a deer. I would say that here is the struggle. It's also there, but it really depends on with which lens you're looking at it. Because my students, if he looks at one of the assignments and says that just convince his mother how much of a tyrant I am, okay, he takes home one of the assignments I give and just throws it in front of her mom in anger and says, look at this. Like this guy, I have been working on this for 20 hours and I barely got 52. What sort of a tyrant is this person? Like, he's showing a snippet of a hardship, and it's hardship. And 20 hours just for getting 52 seems excessive and whatnot. But mom would say, no, let's look at it from a wider perspective of, because now you are isolating it and showing the piece of it. This is what it is with the materialist worldview. You just take a snapshot of isolate everything and take a snapshot and try to interpret it as such. But Quranic worldview is, since it's La ilaha illallah, looking at it from Tawheed perspective, I need to evaluate the whole existence altogether. That lion killing the deer versus the water molecule getting all the way to here. It's coming out from the same hand. Then I will see that in the big picture, as I start seeing that mercy, cooperation is everywhere in this existence, with that lens, I will go and reconsider what does it mean that the lion was attacking the deer. Because it's inevitable. Yes, lion attacks deer. Yes, teacher gives hard homework. But if you look at it from education point of view, that hard assignment would be necessary. You will start interpreting it. So this is why the two perspectives are so different, yet they talk about the same existence. So do we look at it from that lens?
I guess taking that exact same example, if your feeling doesn't change toward that assignment ultimately, does that mean you still haven't reached the la ilaha illallah? Like if you're like, I guess you're like, I did this assignment for 20 hours and here I am at 50%. And you're like, okay, let me try to reflect. And then you're still back at that statement of like, I cannot, this is, because you're like, I understand there's a need for this, but I'm still tired. Like I still feel the burden of that thing. Ultimately, even though I recognize it's a process I must go through to try to understand this content at the very least. Because I guess like, there's no way to divert hardship to try to learn something you haven't learned yet. Or is there, I guess, in the name of La ilaha illallah? Like, can you just surpass life just because you said La ilaha illallah?
I think it's just a matter of we pay price for certain things, right? If you sell me a piece of metal and ask for, like, let's assume you are selling me a small shiny thing and you're asking for $10,000 for this small shiny thing. I would say like $10,000 for this small shiny thing. Come on, like it doesn't worth it. And I no way I can pay $10,000 for this small shiny thing. But then if people start explaining you that this small shiny thing is actually a valuable thing and actually it's worthy 10,000 or even more, if you are convinced about it, you will pay that money. Yeah, paying that money is there. But in the first one, it was a meaningless, wasteful, pointless thing. In the second one, now it becomes a worthy thing. So in the first part with the assignment, if you don't see the benefit of it or the point of it, it was waste of time and energy for nothing. That's why you take that it just 20 hours went into waste. But after reconsidering, you realize the point in it, then you say that that investment is actually necessary to be made into that, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Meaninglessness is the darkness that makes us hate things. Once I start seeing meaning in there, I'm going to be perfectly okay with paying that price for that.
So going back to this distinction, we don't have much time, by the way, maybe 5 more minutes. Like one worldview is about a struggle and conflict, another worldview is about the cooperation and guidance. So when we formulate this way, it sounds like, why anybody would choose the struggle. I mean, if it's a matter of choice anyway. But as the author says, so the struggle is the base understanding the philosophy. But at the same time, when we look at from the superficial perspective, we see achievements there. Like what struggle means, for instance, if you go to your, let's say, the lab and do something, and there's a beautiful outcome, you will publish it. They say you deserve it. You did something great, and we will celebrate you, right? This is struggle. Because it means that there was a darkness there, and you studied so hard with your light, and you gained something yourself. Now you deserve celebration. And then you feel good. So this is the superficial, as author says, the lights. So it says that although at the core there's this darkness, they try to numb people by giving some superficial lights. The example is like, you go to what square? Times Square at that time, and it's almost like a daytime, right? With all these lights and so on. But you know that it's nothing. It's so superficial. Your humanity does not accept that. So this is the example, like you celebrate your achievement and it boosts your ego. And you say, do you know what? I prefer this life. Because what is the alternative? Whatever it's good is there, you say, it is given to me. I didn't invent it. I didn't, made it. It is given to me. All I did, I asked, and it is given to me. This is the humility. Just opposite of, let's say, celebrating your success. How Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca? Bowing down, so that like he was riding the camel or camel, right? Not a horse. Riding the camel, and his forehead would touch the camel. Out of what? Humility. Like he was not, riding the camel like this. We conquered the land, which is what we see today, even with, so-called Muslim people or so-called Muslim countries and whatever, right? This is the opposite. So it is not easy from the superficial perspective. They accept, this cooperation or guidance one, because it comes with the humility as well. And sometimes we are so, the fooled with these glittering lights. Oh, in this life, in this worldview, they celebrate me. I have this freedom or that freedom, seemingly. But at the core, it's pure struggle. You have to survive yourself. The next moment, if you go to your lab and you cannot produce something publishable, your boss will tell you that, I'm sorry, but you are fired. That's the life. But in the Quranic worldview, when you are given something good, you say, Alhamdulillah. When you are given something bad, you say, Alhamdulillah. So the humility and peace is there, but lacking some superficial lights. And we most of the times find ourselves being attracted to this, the other worldview. Why not I achieve something? Why not I become the best? But I become the best. Any concluding remarks? Let's conclude with beautiful comments of
I have one question.
yours.
Although this discussion is, okay, thank you. So although this discussion is a comparison between the Western and Eastern part of the world, but my question is, most of the people rely on relocating themselves to the Western part of the world. But I think there's a tension in the Muslim world as well. I'm not sure what is this. Most of the people lives in the Western people, like we are in the Western part of the world, but I still feel there is some tension here. I'm not sure what happened. Like in the Eastern part of the world, like we are free to observe the Islamic, like the behaviors or whatever, the namaz or whatever the other things, but in this part of the world, somehow it feels difficult. Maybe my point of view is different than yours.
I guess for that, I would say I am offering my prayers more freely here. Like yesterday, we were somewhere for shopping and I needed to pray. It was time for prayer. And in the parking lots, I put my prayer mat and I prayed comfortably. Savages. But in Turkey, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay.
Because then people would say,
Savages.
people would say, look, we are also Muslim. Are you showing off? As I am praying, I would hear such a command, and the one who makes the command probably would be somebody not praying, or even sometimes even somebody who prays might make that command too. But someone who doesn't make the command, doesn't do the prayer, would say, look. I mean, this is the attitude. look. Yes, are we not Muslim? So, and then, like only in Turkish Airlines, I heard, like I asked to the hostess to show me a place to do the prayer. I flew with Italian, with Chinese, with German and whatnot. They show me a place. In Turkish Airlines, the hostess says, well, actually, you know what? You can delay your prayer. Like, they give me fatwa. So I don't know. Like in this sense, I will agree with sisters who said that freedoms here. Yes, there is a version of freedom in here, which I do appreciate. So we should appreciate what we have here, but it's not detached. It's not one-dimensional. So there are prices for that freedom as well. So it's from one aspect. Why is that freedom being tolerated is another thing, and that's why the author was making that distinction, saying that there is Christianity within here, and he is talking about Christianity as a positive thing because it's coming from revelation. But it says then there's this materialist worldview, which is by its birth against revelation, since there's no light in him.
Okay, let's conclude here, inshallah. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha.